So, students, good morning to all. And going to start the today's session, and we are talking about the cell structure. Now, here the structures are already shown. What is the cell structures? What are the different function of the cells? What is the cell organs, and we have talked about the who has discovered the cells and how this discovery was take place. We talk about all these points in previous class. Now we are going to discuss about the last topic which we yesterday we have left with that is the types of the cells, and within that types of the cell we within a factory, when there are the number of the workers and there are the number of the departments, and these departments and the worker, or we call as a labor, these have a common objective to complete their task. And like that there is a in the cell there is a the different kind of the works, and the main objective is to understand to the process of a life cycle for a living being, and to complete all these life cycle for a living being. There are the two main cells which is known as prokaryotics and eukaryotics, and this kind is basically based on the cellular structures, and on the basis, that means on the basis of the cellular structures, the cell are divided into two parts, that is the prokaryotic and eukaryotic. Here just I want to select the, today I will use highlighters. Now, when we talk about the prokaryotic cells, where it is found, how it is looks like, we will going to discuss all these points. Now, in this prokaryotic cell have a no nucleus, when we are talking about the cell, in the cell there are there is a what we call as a cell, and in that cell there is a nucleus, but in prokaryotic cell there is a no nucleus. Instead, some of the prokaryotic, such as bacteria, these is the some prokaryotic cells, example of the prokaryotic cells of the living beings. And in bacteria, these have a region within the cell where the genetic material is freely suspended. In this bacteria, there are the genetic materials. What happened in the nucleus? Basically, nucleus provide the all the information related to control whole the process of life being, and this nucleus basically is responsible for the genetic. And here the in case of, if there is a no absence of the nucleus, what happens, the genetic materials, like bacteria, in bacteria genetic materials is freely suspended within that region, and this region is called nucleoids. That is the nucleoid. That means there is a bacteria, in bacteria there is a region where these genetic materials are freely suspended, and that freely suspended genetic materials where this kind of the things are available, that is called the nucleoids, that nucleates. And these are the basically these prokaryotic are single celled organisms. When we, the difference is prokaryotic cell is to, it is a kind of the single celled organisms, like there is a examples of archaea and bacteria and cyanobacteria. There are the, these are the some examples are given here. Within that examples, these live living organisms are basically related to single celled microorganisms where these nucleides are found. Now, the to understand how these are the measures, so there are the how you can say these are the microorganisms, means there the size in between the 1.1 to zero point 0.5 micrometers. Mu here is a sign like that is recall as a micro, and this m is a meter, so that is called the micrometer. And this micrometer is basically the cell size of all the all the prokaryotic cells are basically in between these parameter, that is zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.5 micrometers in diameters. The heredity materials can either be DNA. There are the two. When we talk about what is heredity material, these heredity materials are DNA, which is in their nucleides, and it may be RNA. Both the things can be available. The prokaryotic reproduce by binary fissions. There are the different types of the reproduction take place in this prokaryotic, and the reproduction which take place in prokaryotic is basically are binary fission, a form of sexual reproduction. That is the binary fission is basically the process by which the reproduction take place. That is the binary fission. Now, the second cell is known as the eukaryotic cell. Now, when we talk about the eukaryotic, it has a nucleus. That means the kind of the living organisms in which there is a nucleus available, and the size of this cell is in between the 10 to 100 micrometer in diameter. That means it is so large as compared to the prokaryotic cell. Now, the broader category involved in which kind of the organisms come in this area, and there are the plants, fungi, and protozoa, as well as animals. These are kind of the organisms which comes under this range 100 to 10 to 100 micrometer. Now, there is a all the cells in which the transports of the nutrients and electrolytes are monitoring, and that things are monitored by plasma membrane. That means there is a kind of the things which is separate, which separate the organelle things which is inside the cell and the outer out of the environment. That means it is a kind of the mm, um, barrier which differentiate between the outer environment and inner environment, and that kind of the thing is basically plasma membrane. And this plasma membrane is responsible for very well the monitoring the transports of the nutrients. These nutrients are getting from the environments, if it is related to plants and other type of fungi and protozoa living organisms. And also there are the electrolytes. That means which kind of the things get inside and get outside. That things are maintained by this plasma membrane, and it is also responsible to cell communication. There are the different cells in all living organisms. All these cells are how they communicate to one another. This plasma membrane is also responsible for this kind of the things, and the reproduction sexually as well as asexually take place In case of prokaryotic, only the binary fission will take place, whereas in case of eukaryotic, there is a the sexual reproduction take place where they get come contact together, or without contacting they are reproducing the new one. And in case of, there are the some contrasting features between the plant and animals. That means though the plants and animals comes under the eukaryotic, even the plants have there is some features which is not available in animals. And the chloroplast is a kind of the nucleides, organelles, which is available in the plant cell, whereas these plant cells are absent in the animals. These chloroplast is absent in the animals. This is the cell structure. You can just take here. This one is, we are talking about the plasma membrane, which is outer layer. This outer layer basically separate the inner to outer, and the condition of inner cell is there are the different kind of the nuclear that organelles are. These are the some organelles of all the cell structures, which is called as a plastids. Another one is called as a vacuoles. That is, there is some rhizomes, and also there is a mitochondria. These are the some kind of the things are available here. And the cell structure comprises individual component with the specific function. These are the these that means when we talk about the cell structure, so there are the individual component, and like there's like plastids, vacuoles, plasma membranes, and these has basically a specific functions. These individual component have a specific function to carry out the life process, so that the life process can be take place. These components includes, what are these components, individual components? It may be cell wall. Cell wall is basically kind of the layer which formed after the plasma membrane. That is, plasma membrane is also known as a cell membrane. Its plasma membrane is also a cell membrane. There is another thing that is in whole the cell structure. There are the some this like there this there are the spot point is there, which is a liquid form, and that liquid form is basically a cytoplasm, and this is the nucleus we are talking about in case of prokaryotic, and it is available in the nucleus. Cell organelles, these are the different things which you can see here. These are the some, all these things are cell organelles. And read to explore more insight on the cell and structure and function. These we will have a discussion. Now, the first part, which is called as a plasma membrane. Plasma membrane is basically also known as a cell membrane. These cell membranes are, here you can see the plasma cell membrane or plasma membranes. Now, what happened? This membrane basically supports and protects the cell. Number one, which we have to remember, that these membranes are basically helps and support to the cell. Now, the other things, it control the movement of substance in and out, which how much the quantity get inside, and what is the wasting thing that should go outside. These things are controlled by this plasma membrane. It separates, as already told in previous slide, that it separates the cell from the external environment as already shown in the figure. These basically separate the cell from the external environment, and the cell membrane is present in all the cells, and that means plasma membrane is a kind of the things which is present in all the cell, if present. Now the cell membrane is a outer covering of the wall. We just so that all the things are, you can see here, this outer part, we are talking about this outer part here, this part, all the things are covered by the plasma cells. You can just, I'm just drawing outer layer of this membrane cell. All the things are covered in this way. It is the cell membrane, and such as, and within which all the other organelles, cytoplasm, nucleus are enclosed as already shown. This this is the nucleus, this there is some cytoplasm is there. All these things are covered under the uh, plasma membrane. By the structure, it is a porous. Now when we talk about the plasma membrane, it is a porous membrane. Within the, that porous means what, there is a some pores and uh, hold the structures. Like in our body, there are the some on the skin there is some pores by which the sweats get outside, and that happens. That looks like in the cell membrane also, which permit what happened here, which permit the movement of the selective substances. What does it mean? It means the quantity which is required to take, that is the selective substance, and what and out of the cell, and what are the substances which get outside. If the quantity, there is a wastage kind of the thing, that much the waste should be get outside from the body, from the living organisms, and it goes through only the this cell membrane, and that's why it is called as selective substances. All the substances not get inside the body, or all the substances which is inside the body are not going to outside, which is the necessary, that things are kept inside the body and other things are go outside with the different kind of the process. Beside this, the cell membranes also protect the cellular component from damages and linkage. This there are the cellular component means all the kind of the cell organelles which is present in this cell structure or cell membrane. All these things are protected by cell membrane from the damaging and leakage. So that they perform their work properly. Now it forms the wall-like structures. This cellular membrane is basically, the cell membrane is basically gives other structure, and that structure is basically looks like a wall between the two cell as well as between the cells and its surrounding. Here, if you talk about in terms of just I want to show here, if you want to talk about this cell and this outer cell, then there is a two cells, and if you talk about the plasma membrane and this external environment, it provides the walls. The plants are immovable, so there is a cell structure are well adopted. Since the plant, living organisms like plants is immobile, so the cell structure are well adopted to protect from them from external factors. And the cell wall help to reinforce these functions. This also helps to reinforce the function. All these the organelles to do their work properly, these kind of the message are given by the cell membrane. Now the second thing which is known as a cell wall, very important. And this cell wall is the most prominent part of the plant structure. It is only found in plant cell, not in the animal cell. It founds in only plant cell. It is now how it is made up. It is a kind of the uh, carbohydrates, that is the cellulose. And this cellulose or hemicellulose or pectins, these are the some kind of the materials we call as materials, or the hormones by which these walls are developed, and this developed only in plants structures. Now the cell wall is present exclusively in plant cell. As already told, this cell is basically found in on the plant cell only. It protects the plasma membrane and other cellular component. It also provide protects the plasma membrane and other cellular component which is inside the plasma membrane. The cell wall is also the outermost layer of the plant. It is the outermost. That means in before the in case of the plant, before the plasma membrane there is a cell wall, and that cell wall is the outermost layer of plant cell, and it is rigid and stiff structure. It provides the rigidity and stiff structure surrounding the cell membrane. It provides shapes and supports. We are talking about cell wall, basically provides a shape and support to the cells and project them from the mechanical shocks and injury. It also protects the mechanical shocks. If any kind of the things happen, unwanted thing happen, and that kind of the unwanted things are protected by the cell wall. Now the cytoplasm, when we talk about the cytoplasm it is a cell organelles. In the plasma membrane, there are the different kind of the cell organelles. Within that, there is a cytoplasm, and this cytoplasm is basically a thick, clear and jelly-like substances present inside the cell membrane. As I already told, the most of the chemical reaction within cell take place in this cytoplasm. That means whatever the things are coming from outside, they gets uh, chemically react, and this chemically reaction will take place basically in cytoplasm. And after the reaction, they form a dissolve in the blood cell, and these blood cells basically transports the blood from one part of the body to the another part of the body. That things are very important. Now the cell organelles such as endoplasmic reticulums, vacuoles, mitochondria, and rhizomes. These are ribosomes are suspended in this cytoplasm. That means cytoplasm is a kind of the jelly-like substances in which the chemical reactions are take place, and that, where there are the other functions, other cell organelles like endoplasmic reticulums, vacuoles, mitochondria, and rhizomes are suspended. This is the cytoplasm. The other part of the cell organelles are nucleus. The nucleus contains the hereditary materials of the cell. These nucleus basically is talking about the heredity. That means which carries the DNA and RNA for the reproduction, and for this that kind of the things which transfer from the parent's body to the other generations. It sends signals. These nucleus send the signals to the different cells to grow. That means so that other cell also grow, mature, whatever the cells are inside the body, all these cells get grow, gets mature and divide and die. These are the information which are provided by the nucleus. The nucleus surrounded by clear envelope. There is a envelope which I want to show in this figure here. Here, this is the nuclear. This part is basically outer layer of the nucleus is basically, all the things are called as a nucleus, but this outer layer is basically a what we call as a nuclear envelope that separates the DNA from the rest of the cell. That nuclear envelope is a kind of the wall which separate the DNA which is inside the nucleus from the rest of the other cells. Now the nucleus protects the DNA and is an internal component of plant cell. The plant cell, the DNA means nucleus as an internal component of in the plant cell. Now there, as already told, there are the cell organelles. These cell organelles are composed of various cells organelles that perform certain specific. These organelles are basically perform say specific functions to carry out life process, and that is in which I have already talked about the nucleus, cytoplasm, cell wall. These three things I have already talked here. The another things, the nucleus is the sites of the ribosomes synthesis. Also, it is involved in control cellular activities and cellular reproduction, as already given in the previous slides. Now, nuclear membrane already told. Nuclear membrane protects nucleus. These basically nuclear membrane means that protects the nucleus by forming a boundary between the nucleus and other organelles, that already talked in the previous slides. That it is written here nuclear envelope. This is a nuclear membrane. Now the chromosomes, when we are talking about the chromosomes is the part of the DNA, and in which there is a this chromosome basically is to determine the sex of an individual. That means what are the whether the new generation may be girls or male or female. That is what the sex of an individual. um, each human cell contains the 23 pairs of these chromosomes. These are the chromosomes which is in the nuclear membranes. Now this part is very important. Endoplasmic reticulums. The endoplasmic reticulums is involved in the transportation of the substance throughout the cell. Whenever we eat these kind of the selective substances which is required for the growth and development of living organisms, that is the process of transportation of the substance by the endoplasmic reticulums. These the primary role of this endoplasmic reticulum to provides the carbohydrate and lipids. There are the different kind of the lipids, interior steroids, and the proteins. This is the essential kind of the things by which the whole the organ this whole the organisms are worked, and these are the performed by endoplasmic reticulums. And there is a one another things which is called as a Golgi bodies, and these Golgi bodies are the called as a cells post office. Since why it is called a sales post office? Because the transportation of material within the cell, because it the all the transportation which is carries from the endoplasmic reticulums are basically done through the Golgi bodies. Now, when we talk about another organelles, cell organelles, that is called the ribosomes, and these ribosomes are protein synthesis of the cell. These ribosomes work function is to synthesize the protein for the cell. Now, when we talk about the mitochondria is known as the powerhouse of the cell. It is so called because it produces the ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and the cell's energy currency. It is basically the which provide the energy to the cells, and that is what the ATP is. And ATP is basically found in the powerhouse of the cell, and that is the mitochondria. Now, the uh, after the mitochondria, there is a one another part, that is lysosomes. Lysosomes are basically engulfing the foreign bodies. That means engulfing the foreign bodies entering the cell and help in cell renewal. If anything's are excess, if there is a no digestion take place by the uh, other organelles, then these lysosomes basically uh, do some kind of the activity by which that things can be renewed. That means these lysosomes are provide when there is a excess of the toxic element or then it itself it damages that cell, and again renew mm, that cell in the body. And that's why, since it is and they destroy the things by themselves, that's why it is called a suicidal bag. The lysosomes is also known as a suicide bag. Now, the chloroplast, and this chloroplast is a kind of the organelles which is found in basically plant cell, and these kind of the cells basically helps in the photosynthesis. It contains the pigment like chlorophyll, by which the foods are made. There is another part that is called the vacuoles. Vacuoles are basically stored food, water, and other waste material in the cell. This is the cell which store water, waste materials, food. These kind of the things are happened here. These are the things which we discuss in next class. What you have to do now, you understand all these points. What is plasma membrane, cell membrane, what is cell wall, what are the different cell organelles, and what are the different function of these cell organelles. You have to understand and go through the one given pictures in your slide, and that pictures you have to also made, and it is most important and interesting topic which we are here discussing. So take a time, but all these things you have to go through this slide. All the information I have given here, uh, read the book is also essential, so that if any things which we are not discussing, you can note down that things we will discuss later on, if possible. Otherwise, the information which we are here, I am giving from here is enough to understand. Now, this much is for today's session. Now we will meet next class with the continued topic. Thank you.